Hello, welcome back to Blow Harvest Vintage Toys and part 2 of a history of Gerry Anderson toys. Hot on the heels of Captain Scarlett, the next television series produced by Century 21 arrived in 1968. Joe 90 saw the focus of the series shift away from the traditional sci-fi adventures of the past to smaller scale character-based tales, but still incorporating plenty of action and excitement. From a merchandising standpoint, the show's main character, 9-year-old super spy Joe McClane, provided many possibilities for role-playing and toys and games. Gone, however, were the traditional wide assortment of vehicles and hardware, with the series offering just 2 Starcraft, which could be turned into toys. Professor McClane's jet air car, or the Joe 90 car, as most packaging of the time called it, and Sam Loover's silver saloon car were both released by Century 21 as large-scale friction drive toys, with the former also being produced in a much rarer battery-operated form. Dinky Toys were also on hand, as always, to provide models of the same 2 vehicles, but as with Thunderbird 2, Sam's car appeared in a variety of colours over the years. Century 21 also provided toys of Joe's pistol, transmitter, briefcase, and of course his iconic glasses. One of the rarest items produced was a costume of Joe's bright red jumpsuit. Not the ideal choice of an outfit for a secret agent, surely. Allowing young fans to roleplay as a hero, and for those not so keen on dressing up, Pedigree produced a somewhat genderly ambiguous 6-inch doll of the character. If Joe 90 had provided less material for merchandising than the next Anderson series, 1969's The Secret Service, saw Century 21 juggernaut grind to a halt almost completely. With the series only being aired in a few regions and the story centred around the adventures of a parish priest and his gardener, there was very little to exploit in the way of toys. And aside from the usual comic strips and a pair of novels, the only merchandising of note came in the form of Dinky Toys' replica of Father Stanley's Unwin's Model T Ford Gabriel. A beautiful reproduction of the car, but hardly a must-have for the nation's children, the same way that Thunderbird 2 had been. In 1969, Anderson finally hung up the puppet strings for good and began work on his first live-action TV series, UFO. This was to be the final series produced and marketed by Century 21 and was aimed at a much older audience than any of the previous Anderson shows. So much so that broadcasters found scheduling the series difficult. Despite this confusion, Dinky Toys produced models of 3 vehicles from the series: the Shadow Mobile, the Shadow Interceptor, and Ed Straker's car. At this point, Dinky must have had lots of leftover paint from all the Thunderbird 2s they sold over the years, as the White Interceptors and Gunmetal Grey Mobiles both arrived in the nation's toy shops in a brilliant shade of green. Straker's car also went through several colours too. Perhaps sensing a return to the glory days, Dinky Toys also produced a pair of toys based on the vehicles, based on The Investigator, a pilot film produced in 1973 by Gerry Anderson, featuring a pair of puppet schoolchildren aiding a mysterious alien visitor in his quest to make the world a better place. The pilot was a failure and the toys were eventually released as a generic Coast Guard launch and armoured car with no mention of the screen origins. By the time it seemed likely that the second series of UFO was on the cards, but when this project was cancelled due to falling ratings in America, Anderson chose to salvage the pre-production work that had already been done and transform it into an entirely new show. The result was Space 1999. The story of human colony on the moon, struggling to survive after being blown out of Earth's orbit and into deep space by a massive nuclear explosion. Once again, Dinky provided the must-have toys of 2 versions of the Eagle Transport, one with a detachable passenger module and the other with a detachable freighter module, carrying canisters of nuclear waste. But as with the UFO range, this toy was more often found in metallic green or blue than the original white TV series. Dinky weren't the only UK company to produce an Eagle. AHI released a die-cast friction Eagle, while a 5cm die-cast was included in a range of 3 miniature Space 1999 craft from Roadstars. Space 1999 also provided 2 memorable props in the stun gun and the Comlock, which were released as toys by various manufacturers while the series was on air. Toys of the Yellow Moon Buggy were also produced in several scales, while Polytoy produced a range of 5 20cm posable dolls, with each one managing to look almost slightly like a character from the series if you squinted. Airfix offered the Eagle Transporter in a model kit form from 1976 onwards, and followed this up a year later with the Hawk, a space fighter that only appeared in the fans' favourite episode War Games. 1978 saw the release of the final Gerry Anderson model kit, and this time not one based on a television series or a film, but a comic strip. Star Cruiser 1 only appeared in the pages of Lookin' from 77 to 79, but the Airfix model did nevertheless make a very brief on-screen appearance in 1979. An unpainted Star Cruiser can be seen on the desk of a special shot news scene added in the first episode of Space 1999 when it was released on home video and cable as a feature film entitled Alien Attack. After Space 1999 finished shooting at the end of 1976, Anderson's career hit a hiatus, and it would be 6 years until his next television series. The much more family-friendly Terrorhawks arrived on British television. By this time, Star Wars had exploded onto the silver screen and had become a merchandising behemoth that was far outstripped anything in Century 21's wildest dreams. With even characters who had only made a 2-second appearance in the background of one scene getting immortalised as plastic action figures. This meant that the kind of merchandising empire that Century 21 had pioneered are now commonplace in the British toy industry, and Anderson now found himself racing to keep up in the field where he had once led the way. While the Terrorhawks action figures were less than impressive even at the time, with few accessories, minimal articulation, several characters only being identifiable by the name on the blister card, rather than any genuine resemblance to the screen counterparts, the toys based on the various vehicles and craft were at the upper end of the quality spectrum. They were produced in 2 scales, the larger deluxe die-cast metal and the plastic action models of the Battlehawk, Hawkwing, Terrorhawk and Treehawk provided the most successful. These toys also featured a variety of projectiles, moving parts, and so many other intricate action features that they could be forgiven for wondering just who such complicated toys are really aimed at. When presented with the Battlehawk toy during the filming of the 2003 DVD documentary Terrorhawks, voice artist Jeremy Hitchin commented that these toys were specifically aimed at 64-year-old rocket scientists or kids. Sadly, even though the series proved a success on television, the Terrorhawks toy line was short-lived, perhaps due in part to being ill-advised decision by Anderson himself. Aware that the toys had at times been difficult to get hold of during the runs of his previous shows, he decided that this time the Terrorhawks merchandise would already be on the shelves by the time the first episode aired. But in his biography he recalled, it was a fatal mistake because no new show builds up an audience in one showing. It takes at least 6 to 10 weeks before the people begin to love the show and its characters, and then they had to start to look in the shops for the merchandising. This happened with Terrorhawks, but because the toys already in the shops failed to sell immediately, many shops chose not to reorder. Despite this, or perhaps even because of this, the Terrorhawks toys still maintain a healthy second-hand market to this day, with the vehicles in particular selling regularly between £100 to £150 when in good condition. It would be over 10 years before Gerry Anderson brought a new television series to the screen, but little did anyone realise that one of the biggest success stories in the history of Anderson merchandising was just around the corner. In 1991, the BBC purchased the rights to Air Thunderbirds on BBC Two. Originally intended to be nothing more than a cheap filler programme for the Friday early evening time slot, the show proved to be a massive hit once again, and the runaway success of these repeats led to demands for toys and playsets based on the series. However, perhaps understandably, no toy manufacturers considered the possibility that repeats of a 30-year-old series would be capable of such mass audience appeal. As a result, Christmas 1991 came and went without a single Thunderbirds toy on the shelves, save the occasional model kit imported from Japan. By the time the series was repeated again the following year, public interest was still just as high, and this time Britain's toy and game manufacturers are ready to meet the demand. Matchbox led the way with their best-selling range of toys and action figures. The one item in particular produced during this period was the electronic Tracy Island playset. While it isn't exactly difficult to get hold of this item today, it is perhaps the toy more than any other that people think of when it comes to the ultimate item of Gerry Anderson merchandise, due to the panic in the nation's toy shops when it quickly sold out. Following Thunderbirds, the BBC enjoyed an equally popular repeat run of Stingray, and Matchbox were once again on hand to release a small selection of models and action figures based on the show. However, this would be the last Anderson series the company would handle. Soon after this, a group of Matchbox employees, led by a former managing director Nick Austin, left to set up their own company, Vivid Imaginations. And the first property they acquired was the rights to the Captain Scarlett and the Mist runs. In the run-up to the show's BBC Two repeat run, Vivid Imagination raced around the clock to get their toys on the shelves in time for them to become the best-selling toy of Christmas 1993, firmly establishing Vivid as one of the country's foremost toy and game manufacturers. Following this, a Saturday morning BBC One repeat of Joe 90 soon followed, which, despite not being as successful as its predecessors, provided Vivid Imaginations with another successful toy line. This put them in the ideal position to capitalise the next Gerry Anderson production, 1995's Space Precinct. This new show, described by Anderson as Hill Street Blues in space, would seem to have been the ideal candidate for both a successful television series and a hugely popular toy line. Perhaps inspired by the huge success of the repeats of the previous Anderson series, Vivid assumed that they had a hit on their hands and invested as heavily on the project as they had done with Captain Scarlett. A series of 12 action figures were produced, as well as 2 vehicles for them to ride in. The police cruiser, which appears in every episode of the show, and a police bike, which didn't. Until it was hastily inserted in the background of one scene in the episode Takeover, in order to justify its appearance in the toy line. Sadly, for whatever reason, Space Precinct failed to find the same mass audience that the previous Anderson shows and their repeats had enjoyed, and the merchandise warmed pegs and shelves in toy stores up and down the country. Nick Austin recalls, Space Precinct was not a commercial success for us. The BBC originally planned for an early evening primetime slot on a Saturday evening, and then subsequently moved to Monday evening on BBC Two. That one decision killed the project commercially for us. Today, though, certain figures are hard to find than others. These Space Precinct toys are relatively easy to track down for reasonable prices. Despite this setback, there were still future Anderson-related successes for Vivid to look forward to, as Thunderbirds, Stingray and Captain Scarlett all returned to the BBC with repeat runs in the early 2000s. Once again, all 3 series were hugely popular, and once again the associated toys all sold extremely well. And in the case of Tracy Island, sold out completely to the frustration of parents nationwide. Many of these new toys included sound chips and could play pre-recorded dialogue and sound effects with the push of a button. Anderson's final television series arrived on our screens in 2005. New Captain Scarlett was a CGI reimagined of the original 1967 classic, and with it came the traditional deluge of merchandising in the form of books, comics and toys. Unfortunately, while the series was well received by fans and critics alike, it was placed within a Saturday morning kids show rather than given a separate screening on its own right. This meant that the series had practically no chance of finding an audience for itself, and almost instantly destroyed the future of both the show and the accompanying toy line. This time it was Bandai who won the rights to produce the Captain Scarlett toys, producing a range of 5 action figures, 4 vehicles for them to ride, and 4 assortments of smaller vehicles and figures roughly in the scale with their larger electronic sky-based playset. In 2006, Corga also brought out a line of detailed die-cast vehicles based on both the new and old versions of Captain Scarlett. Today, interest in Gerry Anderson merchandise remains as strong as ever, with a continuous stream of new merchandise arriving almost monthly, and a second-hand market for the classic toys of yesteryear continuing to thrive. It's a testament not only to the talent and skill of the people who worked the original television series, but also those who devised and marketed those toys, that their popularity has endured well into the 21st century, with no sign of stopping. And that so many people have such fond memories of them. So you go, that's the history of Gerry Anderson toys. I'd like to thank Chris Dale, who wrote the article. He's a writer and voice actor on Big Finish's Terrorhawks and Captain Scarlett Audio Rangers. And if you want to read the full article, go out to the official Gerry Anderson website. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. May the toys be with you.